So what are the different record types you might have in your possession? Now, there are various types and size records in existence, but for the purpose of this course, I'm only dealing with 33 and a third, 45, and 78 records. Here you have some examples of those. The top left is a 78. Here you have the Sgt. Pepper's. That's a 33 and a third. And believe it or not, although it's smaller, that's to the bottom left. That too is vinyl. And to the right next to it, to the right, with the spindle in it, is a 45. Now you can't talk about record types unless we mention something about record speeds and size. And when we talk about speeds, it's RPM. RPM means revolutions per minute. And you might think about RPM for cars, speed, speed, speed. Here we will talk about RPM as it relates to records. Record speeds are 45 RPM, 33 RPM, 78 RPM, and 16 RPM. But when it comes to records, size really does matter. Record sizes, they come in three standard diameters: a 7-inch, 10-inch, and 12-inch. And the larger the diameter, the longer the groove can be and the greater the possible playing times, depending upon rotational speed. Now, the actual playing time is a ratio between speed and the length of the groove. Hello, what is an EP? Extended play record. EP equals shorter runtime, and that's really sums it up. Extended play records have a runtime that's shorter than long playing records, longer than vinyl singles, and EPs don't have a standard format and are recorded. Yes, listen carefully. You may have an EP in a 12-inch, you may have an EP in a 10-inch, or you may have an EP in a 7-inch record. However, 10-inch EP records are quite rare. Here is an EP. And you'll know it's EP because look at the catalog number, IEP4A. It's an EP. 78 records are any flat disc record made between 1898 and the late 1950s and playing at a speed around 78 revolutions per minute. It's called the 78 by collectors. Now, the materials of which discs were made and with which they were coated were also various types. Shellac, and I'm pronouncing it wrong, eventually became the commonest material, and this is straight from the Yale University Music Library. Generally, 78s are made of a brittle material which uses a shellac resin. Thus, their other name is shellac records. During and after World War II, when shellac supplies were extremely limited, some 78 RPM records were pressed in vinyl instead of shellac wax. Interesting. Particularly the 6-minute 12-inch RPM records produced by V-Disc for distribution to U.S. troops in World War II. That's from Yale University. Trust me, if you find one of these, that should be worth a nice little penny. 78s come in a variety of sizes. So here 10, 12 inch, and they were originally sold in either paper or card covers, generally with a circular cutout allowing the record label to be seen. Since most 78 RPM discs were issued in paper sleeves with no additional company materials, relatively limited information is provided by the items themselves. Now, before vinyl and before shellac, there was phonographic cylinders, and they're the earliest commercial medium for recording and reproducing sound. Do you have any? That's interesting. Commonly known simply as records in their era of greatest popularity. Now, these hollow cylinder objects have an audio recording engraved on the outside surface, which can be reproduced when they're played on a mechanical cylinder phonograph. And in the 1910s, the competing disc record system triumphed in the marketplace to become the dominant commercial audio medium. And this is going back probably to Whoa. Most of you reading this probably may not remember them unless you remember a great-grandparent having them, but you could have them in your, you never know what might be there. Let's talk about weight. Most of the vinyl pressed in the past 20 years are 12-inch records that weigh between 120 and 140 grams. However, some newer records come in the weights of 180, 200, or even 220 grams. Pay very close attention to this, because if you have that, if it's indicated, you want to make sure you put it in your listing. While some may refer to these as audiophile grade records, it does not necessarily mean that they have more sonic benefits. The increased weight of these discs makes them sturdier and more resistant to warping. It also provides a stronger platform for the stylist to rest on and allows for more playbacks before deterioration. Now, some people also claim to hear more fidelity when listening to heavier records. However, this type of vinyl often commands higher prices than the standard grades, often fetching upwards of $50 or more per disc versus a standard record price of around $10 or $30. Note that regardless of weight, the depth of the grooves is exactly the same on all releases. I want to say that again. Regardless of weight, the depth of the grooves is exactly the same on all releases. Just in case you see them in your stash. First introduced by Thomas Edison in the 1870s, a typical cylinder is black or blue and about 4 inches long and 2 inches in diameter. Most of them are worth less than $5, but some can be worth $100 or more. Cylinders that are brown, green, or orange, pink, or bigger than 2 inches can be worth up to $200. That's an Edison record right there. And here are record cylinders. I went through this rather quickly, but this is a quick overview for you to start looking through your stash to try to identify what you just might have. So your homework is separate your records by type if you can. That means if you have any LPs, the LPs should be separated, and the EPs, if you have any, separate those if you can. Put all of your 45's in one place and all of your 78's in one place. And if you do have some cylinders or Edison records, definitely separate them. I think this is exciting. I'm looking forward to what you might discover.